Former teachers of Reddit, what was the last straw that made you quit your job? Saw a 7-year-old girl stab a 9-year-old boy. Head of the school thought it best we rearrange the cubbies so the kids couldn't run to her office for help if they get stabbed. What the frick? Spent a long butt time teaching for a non-profit. Loved doing meaningful work but couldn't support a family in $25K a year. Sold out and started working for a well-known corporate daycare. Basically cleaning up after rich kids for an extra $10K a year. Still working there but I'm heading back to school in January for web design. Figured if I'm gonna do something soul crushing for the next decade or two, may as well make it worth my while. I moved to a different school because my principal and I did not get along. It started with her accusing me of missing too many days of school. After missing the first 2 weeks of the school year after having given birth to a child at the beginning of August, and returning to work at exactly 6 weeks postpartum, and escalated to her accusing me of not having followed proper procedures for sick days when my son was hospitalized with RSV in December of that school year. I had followed the correct procedures, including emailing a detailed lesson plan to about 6 different people, herself included. Never got an apology from her. She called me unprofessional. It got to the point where I asked another administrator if she could look up the days I'd missed and compare them with other teachers. It turned out that if you discounted the days from my 2-week maternity leave, then I had actually missed less than the other teachers at school. Finally, she tried to pull some sort of your missed school day came too close to the end of the school year and broke the union contract bulls when I had a doctor's appointment for my kid in May of that year after not having missed a day since January except for jury duty. By that point I'd found a position at a different school, so I insisted that a union rep be present at all dealings with her from there till the end of the year. Oh, and this is without mentioning that that school had more or less broken down organizationally over the course of that year, including a group of 6 students running a drug dealing ring out of their locker, multiple students threatening multiple teachers, a persistent in-school truancy problem, and more. That year, one student actually jacked off in the back of the science lab to completion, and we didn't have a regular custodian, so the science teacher ended up having to clean it up if he didn't want his classroom smelling like jizz for the rest of the day. We had students throwing chairs out of a 2nd-story window. It apparently got worse after I left. 2. I heard tales of one of the incoming 8th graders literally setting a kid on fire with a Bunsen burner in the same science lab. And yet, I probably could have dealt with that if the administrators had been even remotely competent. For me, it's never been the kids that have made me want to leave a school. It's always been the admin. And this principal was far and away the worst. I'm at a different school now, and it's like night and day. I taught English. My last semester, I had 48 kids, on average, in a classroom that barely held my desk and 30 desks for the students. We had 1 textbook per 3 kids on average. Kids weren't allowed to take textbooks home. I took pictures of my kids working in my classroom and went to law firms begging for legal pads. Went to banks and even my local credit union begging for pens. Lived on mac and cheese and ramen for the first month because I bought all my kids copies of Strunk and White and folders for their work. Went to the English department of the local university and begged them to let me put up flyers pleading with students to donate copies of Shakespeare plays for my kids. Almost ruined a 20-year friendship with my best friend because I kept begging for her to let me use her photocopy privileges with the university's print shop for my kids. Tutored my kids who were struggling on my time. Offered extra credit homework wherever I could. And so on. In the end, nearly every one of my kids passed the English portion of their state proficiency exams. Then I had my end of year review with Sam, our school administrator. Sam was not happy with my performance, while he was content with how my students performed in the state examinations. He felt troubled by my apparent lack of effort and lackadaisical commitment to my students. I can only assume that it was his version of a pep talk. I was done. Somehow I didn't show it at that point to Sam. I finished out that last week, our final week of the school year, and took all my things home with me. I never went back. They were shocked when I sent my letter of resignation in that summer. The school administrator's personal assistant called me saying that she and Sam were both shocked that I had decided to move on. but just in case Sam reads this, I just want him to know, yes, it was me who put those deep scratches all over your brand new BMW you bought with your year-end bonus. Just to show Sam how proud of him I was, I dug down to bare metal. Admin made me change the grade of a kid who did crap because his parents were rich and well known in the community. Frick that, I was done. Had a teacher quit not even a month into my freshman year. Apparently a student from the previous year had failed his class and started a rumor that he was sleeping with students. He tried to fight it at first but eventually just decided it wasn't worth it. He grabbed his stuff, walked into the lunchroom and went, "Have fun the rest of the year. Can't take this anymore." Walked out the door and never came back. So much respect for this guy. I literally just quit teaching UK teacher of 7 and 8 year olds. We call that year 3, not sure which US grade that is. I still have 3 weeks to go before I finish. I have a 1-year-old son. My week should go like this. Monday 5 AM wake up with son. Feed, change, play. 6 o'clock get everyone cleaned and dressed. 7 o'clock drop son off at nursery. 7:30 get to work and start working. Work through lunch to get all work done. 5:15 PM go home via nursery. 5:45 bath. Feed and read book with son. 6:30 put son to sleep. 6:40 make and eat dinner. 7:30 open laptop to do more work. 9 go to bed. Tuesday repeat. Wednesday and Thursday I have meetings so can't mark my books. I chose not to mark the 90 books because they take at least another 90 minutes to complete. Timings are otherwise the same. Friday, same as mom too's. Saturday, Sunday, when my son goes for his nap at 10:30, I work. He sleeps until midday. I do not work when he is awake. I play with him. We do family stuff. He goes to sleep at 6:30. I can usually start work at or before 7 on the weekend. Work from 7 to 9 PM. Go to sleep. All in all it's 60 plus hours of work. I go to my deputy head teacher, my line manager, who said you're struggling. You must be bad at prioritizing. Let's do some training. I complete the training and I did not improve. Still had the same hours. I go back to the deputy, you should stay up until 1 AM on Friday nights to get your work done and then you have your weekend free. No thanks. Fast forward a bit, your books aren't marked and your lessons aren't as good as they should be. I'm worried you're not putting in enough time at work. We're putting you on a support plan. Cool, great. That's a legitimate helping thing. I get helped by the other deputy head. She says I'm doing things right and she's happy. Fast forward a bit more and my line manager is still not happy with my performance. Is everything okay at home? No family problems, and that was it. Started looking for other jobs. It took me 6 months to get to the point where I resigned. I was crying at work because there is just too much to do with the hours I can put in. I wasn't seeing my son and had no downtime. That's absolutely ridiculous. You're 100% right putting family before work. You could work 1,000 hours, and it seems like it still wouldn't have been enough. Hope you found something better. There was no last straw. It was a realization that I was not cut out to be a teacher. Mostly, I didn't get the satisfaction from my student successes that my colleagues got. I would listen to other teachers chat in the staff room and they just cared about their students so much. I wasn't prepared to give that much of myself to my students. Now I'm in grad school preparing to go in a science field that I expect will be a better fit. Not me, but a friend who had been a primary school teacher for over 10 years. She had been having a relationship with the head of her department. Although he was married, he had sold her on the fact that they were separated and about to divorce. The last straw was finding out he was not separated, and not only was he cheating on his wife, but also on his mistress. When she told him she didn't want to be in the relationship anymore, he got her fired. She retaliated by getting him fired and divorced. That was 3 years ago and she has not wanted to go back into teaching. That seems kind of sad because her relationship literally doesn't seem to have anything to do with teaching itself. I was in a managerial role and one of 2 women in an office, a bullpen of all male co-workers. It was a hostile, toxic male environment. I had a co-worker tell me you can't expect me to treat you like a decent human being unless I'm trying to court you, and taking a magazine with Kim K on the cover and simulating Kuming on her tea. There was a slew of obscene things said to me, but I kept working there because I felt like I needed to survive a year there to get hired somewhere better or win a promotion. I lost my crap when my assistant started coming up behind me unannounced and massaging my shoulders. The first time I was stunned and didn't know how to react. The second time was the kill switch. I made it 6 months. I took a job at a decent school. I knew what I was teaching, so I studied all summer until I had a grasp for all of the content for the year. I was going to be teaching AP Computer Science and 3 sections of pre-calculus. I get my schedule for my 2 days of pre-planning and my classes were all different. I was teaching AP Computer Science, 2 sections of advanced algebra, like algebra with a dab of trig, 1 section of a charter math science class, and a remedial recovery course. In case you are doing the math, I was teaching only 1 class I had planned ahead for and 1 extra class than I expected. They had removed my planning to accommodate my extra class. December, before end of last day, I just told him I wasn't coming back. It was already 3 hours of commuting per day, and I didn't feel like I was serving the students to my best ability, so I just said frick it. Didn't quit teaching altogether but quit teaching kids and switched countries. I had a class of 28-year-olds, 13 boys, 7 girls. I would say about 8 of the boys were difficult, didn't want to be there, would fist fight with each other and throw things at each other. And one of them had ADHD, so would frequently have freakouts where he'd throw himself on the floor and get angry. One boy was particularly difficult. He was very clever but hated being in English class and would constantly throw things at the other kids and generally be a dong. One day I confiscated his rubber as he kept throwing it. I explained that he'd get it back at the end of class. He got right up in my face, clenched his fists and started screaming at me to give it back or give him money. I guess because the rubber had cost money. I'm not very tall, and he was just as tall as me. I really thought he was going to punch me. His parents' response? Well, it's your fault because you don't give him enough one-on-one attention in class. If he is still unhappy with your teaching next week, then I will not bring him back and will expect a refund. Manager's response? Clearly you're doing something wrong. You're too soft. They then proceeded to give me conflicting classroom management advice and said that they expected better from me as I was so highly qualified. There was zero support from managers who, surprise, hadn't been in a classroom in years. Not a teacher, but I remember back in grade 7-8 there was a sub-teacher. One of the douche kids told her that she was a bad teacher, among other mean things. She cried. He had to apologize. Never saw her again. Felt bad for her because she looked really young, so assuming she wasn't teaching long. Speaking for my mom, a former teacher of 20+ years who doesn't know how to read it. It was the administration that drove her to quit. The kids drove her nuts. Yeah, but she had 3 of us at home and she'd been dealing with kids for years. That part was doable. The parents who thought their kids could no wrong and demanded they be given the best of reports no matter what was earned was irritating. But in the past, that was just dealt with by insisting that the students' grades are a reflection of whether or not they did assignments correctly, and the measurement doesn't change just because you think highly of your child. But over the years the principals and superintendent were getting unbearably pushy, insisting that the parents be catered to avoid nuisance more than anything else. On top of that, they were changing the curriculum every year, and drastically. This would be understandable if there were actually better things to be teaching, better ways to teach, or updated knowledge to account for, but it was never that. It was just change for change's sake, and usually got so convoluted that not even the teachers could keep up. Near the end, all there was to do was give students as many of the questions and answers that would be on the standardized tests as you could manage to cram into a semester. There was no time to actually teach the material because the lesson plans dictated how long you got to spend on a certain topic. Usually they couldn't get through all the test material in time, even doing nothing but practice quizzes as a class. This obviously meant the grades were dropping, because she literally wasn't allowed to actually teach them. So the pushy parents got worse and the teachers were blamed for failing to prepare the students. So the bosses got worse and brought the hammer down on the teachers. She was under so much stress she was having panic attacks in the middle of school days and having to go home. After that went on for 2 or 3 years, she said, "Frick it, I don't get paid enough for this," and quit. I was wanting to be a high school teacher when I was in college. In my first observation, I got a really good school in the area. Even with that, the students were absolutely horrid. The teacher I was following was completely checked out. He made me teach, which we were definitely not supposed to do, while he took smoke breaks. The kids knew that I had no authority and walked all over me. The teacher told me that being a teacher was the biggest mistake of his life. I brought all of this up to my teachers and administration. They basically told me that if I don't shut up, then I would never get my certification. Well, they were right, because I submitted a formal complaint and quit the program. Nothing ever came of the complaint, but I was free of teaching. Not the sole reason I left teaching, but part of it. I was a preschool teacher. In my state, you have teams of 2-3 teachers per classroom. I was asked by my director to switch from one district to another. It included a pay raise and the new district was 10 minutes from my house. I had just found out I was pregnant and it seemed like a good idea. So, I switched districts. The older co-teacher in my class was not great. She was mean to the kids, thought I was an idiot because my degree is in early childhood education and hers is in elementary education. When I told her I was pregnant, had earlier than I wanted because of morning sickness, she said, "Why would you tell us now? You could have a miscarriage." When I had some spotting and discharge during my pregnancy, she wouldn't let me leave the room to answer my doctor's call, though months later when she cracked a tooth, she immediately left to call her dentist. One day, she asked me if I was wearing deodorant. I was. She said she'd open a window so I wouldn't get so sweaty, made a face implying I smelled. When the boiler system went crazy and the heat cranked to almost 85, she refused to open a window until our secretary came in and saw me overheating on the floor. After feeding our kids hot spaghetti, we loaded them all up to go to a dairy farm. On a 90-degree day, one of our kiddos threw up and she made me walk him back and forth around the farm until his mom got there. I was 6.5 months pregnant, miserable, and nauseous just like the kids. She kept a detailed record of my behavior and shared it with my boss. Secretary was grumpy and wouldn't talk to us at breakfast. She left work at 3:20 p.m. We were free to leave at 3:15. Stuff like that. When we went on summer break, we knew funding would be iffy for the next year. Layoffs were expected. I was laid off and had just had my son. By the time my job was available again, my husband had had a 15% raise and we could afford for me to stay home. So I did. This other teacher went through about a half a dozen co-teachers in 8 years. None of us teach anymore. My godmother, middle school Spanish teacher, quit her second or third teaching job, can't remember which, after the principal asked her to change the grade of a student who failed. As a note, this student was disruptive in class, flunked tests on purpose, didn't turn in homework. His parents didn't respond to any of her letters explaining the state of his education, and was disrespectful to her. So obviously end of the year comes around and he didn't pass his 8th grade Spanish class, so his parents call up in furor. The principal wanted the kid's grade changed because his parents often donated hefty sums of money to the school and were responsible for a restock of new books in the library. My aunt told him to change the grade himself and that she would not be teaching for him in the fall, and walked out and never looked back. Was tutoring a student who was taking advanced math. He asked for help with differential equations, which I hadn't seen in a while. His solution was to loan me his textbooks so that I could refresh and tutor him afterwards, which I declined. I asked him what his major was, and he said electrical engineering. I figured if folks like him thought he had a chance in EE, maybe I did, too. Graduated with my BSE 2 years ago. I'd just like to say, since so many teachers are on here with such crappy experiences, thank you. My parents taught me to love learning, and I have developed genuinely close relationships, friendships with many of my teachers. You are all amazing and don't deserve this kind of treatment. Much luck in your future endeavors, teaching or otherwise. I'm still a student, but even being a TA, I can see how awful being a teacher is. I'm not even a TA for a challenge class. It's just a freshman engineering class. I'm a senior. Our education system is just crap. So many kids don't even think. They find the smallest thing that could give them trouble and ask before they try to work it out themselves. You'd think they'd at least try, since, solving problems is actually what engineering is. But whatever. Plus, a lot of the rough kids give the teacher such crap. I'm pretty close with her. I've known her for 4 years and she's seen some of my rougher patches, but she always talks about how she wants to quit. She's applied for other jobs. The only thing keeping her here is her senior and junior classes that are attached to her. Here's just an example of a student-teacher problem we had recently in that class. For some background, there was this sped kid in our class. He mostly did nothing in there. The teacher was just like, okay, not my problem if you won't work, so he obviously had an F in the class. His mother, however, was so convinced he was already an engineer and kept him in the dang class when you could tell he hated it. During this time, we had a sub come in because the teacher and the senior my class had a field trip. While we were gone, apparently, the sub had said something completely inexcusable to the sped kid. I know this sub, and personally would love to see her fired. She yells at you for talking to other people in class, even if it's one small whisper about the assignment. She threatens to take kids' phones and sell them on eBay, and yells a lot. She's an older Chinese lady with extreme traditional Chinese values. Nothing against them, but they'd probably think she's whack over there, and works as a sub for the good of the school as her husband is a millionaire. Anyway, she said something very bad to this sped kid. So my teacher reports her and what she said to the school administration. Nothing ever comes of it. My school is also in the redneck territory, so we have a lot of racist hillbillies at our school. Heck, the town 5 minutes away has Confederate flags everywhere in the residential area. Anyway, these 3 Muslim girls transferred to our school from another nearby. Their old school was comfortable. I guess they just had to transfer for some reason. They didn't even last 3 days. The bullying was so bad. I heard that people would rip off their hijabs and stuff like that. The administration? Nothing. They never even acknowledged that it happened, much less tried to punish anyone. I have many stories, but my school rant ends here. BC, this post is way too long. I can't speak for her, but I'll never forget one of our subs. She was assigned to us for what was supposed to be 6 weeks due to an illness with a regular teacher. It was one of those core social studies classes. It was a long time ago, so I forget the details. The class I was in and she subbed for was a bunch of freshmen. About a month into it, someone, somewhere, heard or saw a photo of her out at a club. This was the 90s, so before social media as we know it, and the story changed wildly from her just dancing to her being a former prostitute exotic dancer. I think she was like 28 or 29 at the time. After a few days she resigned and told the boys they were going down a bad path, as were the girls who were laughing at her and perpetuating these types of lies. She was calm, collected, and apologized to everyone else who wasn't taking part in her character assassination. Then she just left. 6 years teaching and I finally can't do it anymore. My husband moves a lot for work and I will never get past the point of initial teacher observations. I can't keep jumping major hoops each year. I taught family and consumer sciences, so cooking, sewing, financial management, etc. The high schoolers don't pay attention and think it's an easy A, then would yell at me when they didn't do the work to get an A. I had minimal budgets and was expected to cook at least twice a week with the kids, enough food for 150 kids. I would spend about $1,000 of my own money per semester on ingredients. I had to clean up after kids constantly. My classroom could always be rented out by people, so they would also leave me a mess. No access to laundry facilities at school. I had to bring it home to wash. When I taught middle school I had to work with the area schools. I had the most experience but came from another district. None of my ideas were good enough. I also was given a classroom that echoed. My hearing was shot by the end of the year. Every elective teacher left at the end of the school year for the same reason. Now I have been subbing so far this school year. I think I do a decent job. I get the kids to do the assignments, walk around to help support, give out pencils and use positive reinforcement or restorative practices to get the kids on my side and give a slight reward, like allow headphones and music during silent work time if the kids listen to me explain directions. I just can't do it anymore. I have a few sub jobs lined up through December, but I don't know what to do come January. I can't do it anymore and keep my sanity. For me it was a suspicion. Starting from my first student teaching experience, a girl and her friends accused me of stalking them because I had to continually approach them to remind them to get back on task. In a later teaching job things were great until there was suspicion that I was involved in something inappropriate with students. I never found out exactly what, and there wasn't anything nefarious going on. But I learned the importance of being above suspicion from that job. The next position was at a private school. Super small and intimate setting. No real risk of anything getting by anyone, so no place for suspicion. So I thought. One week I had 3 separate students complain that I made them uncomfortable. No good reason, just uncomfortable. Coincidentally, students that I had recently reprimanded. My admin took my side but moved my room just to be safe. Either way I was done. It's incredibly frustrating when you're in a job that requires you to give so much of yourself, for all the right reasons, and people suspect you of secretly being a criminal predator. I decided I didn't need to be in a job with that kind of stress. I had been wanting to get out of the classroom anyway, but it still sucked because I was just getting really good at it. I loved my kids, and they loved me, and was just reaching a point where I could see myself teaching in the long term. Anyway, it worked out for the best. Ended up in a job that's a much better fit for me, has much more opportunity for growth, and still allows me to give back. Not too many regrets, because although teaching was about as bad a fit for me as a job could be, it forced me to develop a ton of valuable skills that I completely lacked. Things this thread has taught me: I need to appreciate my teachers more and let them know they are doing good jobs. The American system of education is screwed the frick up. It's a massive circular jerk designed to oppress anyone who actually wants to learn or teach. This country cares more about meaningless crap than the future of its citizens. Parents need to back the frick off. Not to the point where we are repeating the 70s and 80s, but somewhere in the middle of those two ridiculous extremes. Many administrators are either so afraid of doing their job, due to overbearing parents and ridiculous standards and requirements, or are completely incompetent because they themselves never had any sort of good guidance. Thank you for teaching. I'm sorry that in this country we care so little about education. I truly am. Both for the sake of our new generations, of which I am a part, and for the sake of those who must educate us. You have many more challenges than those of previous generations. You have to compete with phones, the ever-degrading attention span of the teenager, crappy admins and useless impediments put in place by people who don't understand education. Thank you for the effort you all put in to teach us, even if it has resulted in a departure from the profession. I taught middle school science in one of the largest school districts in the US. I was enticed to leave my secure job in a smaller district in the southern part of the state for a leadership track, bonus and more professional development. The school that hired me was a magnet school that would provide me with all materials needed, support and a great environment. My hard-to-reach student that was on the spectrum, held back 2 years, couldn't see and was behind in reading and content, was teased by another student during a quiz review for volunteering to read. He got up and punched her because he wasn't medicated. Her tooth fell out, so the mother pressed charges on my student. Instead of helping the studnet with a lot of need, he was arrested by the school cop, actual police, and we both cried as he told me how much I was a mother to him since he didn't have one, and we were allowed to hug before he was sent to the back of a cop car. The unfairness of the school system in providing support and social services to kids in need to prevent this was defeating to me. My principal, during the initial meeting with the mom and missing tooth student, said I was one of the best teachers at the school and classroom management wasn't an issue in my class. I've never seen the school to prison pipeline so clear, and when I think about the student my heat breaks each time. The student whose tooth was damaged was the bully for the entire grade level, but because she had a parent and female, she was the victim. My last full-time job, I was a paraprofessional. The year was just crap from beginning to end. I was dealing with a psychotic 9-year-old, being bitten, threatened, spit on, cursed at, and basically abused by severely behavioral kids. Dealing with a missed miscarriage, not enough staff, and taking the blame for when things went wrong even when they were not in any way my fault. The final straw was when a kid threw a book at my spine. He hit me so hard I saw red, whirled on him, and almost smacked him. I caught myself. The next day the same kid tore my glasses off, smashed them, and when I told the head teacher, she said that I had been provoking him. I had just asked what he wanted for lunch. The kid had scratched my eye when he grabbed my glasses. I said in a very flat voice that I was going to the bathroom. Went up to the principal and told him I was done. Turned in my 2-week notice that day. Had to call my in-laws to get my contacts so I could drive home. The principal begged me to stay, but I explained what happened. I was lucky the kid didn't do any serious damage to my eye. I put in the least amount of effort for the rest of the 2 weeks. A parent calling me a glorified babysitter. I quit a lucrative IT career to follow a dream of teaching. I continued it for 5 years. So much crap happened in the final year that I had enough after that final insult and went back into IT. Not me, but my buddy was a teacher at a Catholic high school in a bad neighborhood. He did it for 3 years and left. He said it was ultimately the kids and the parents that made him leave. The kids did not want to learn. They didn't care. They just wanted to hang with their friends, and caused a problem when people tried to make them learn. Then when the kids ultimately failed their classes, the parents would come into the school and blame the teachers, even after being told how their kids behaved in school. I actually know another teacher in this same school who has said the exact same thing, but is still there sticking it out. The final straw for my buddy was when a few of the kids in his class legitimately mistook Lake Erie for one of the oceans, and he realized that even at a high school education, there was nothing he could do to bring these kids back from how far they've gone, and he didn't sign up for that. Now he's trying to find a job with me in sales. One of my old teachers had left his job in South Bend for 3 reasons. There were gang initiations almost daily, shootings from kids who wanted to look cool and bring guns, and the fact that multiple kids attacked him with knives on multiple separate occasions. The admin decided to do jack crap about it. They literally ignored it. This crap happened to multiple different teachers. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.